tonight's news, new direction. The NDP sets a date for a leadership convention and decides to take another look at Meech Lake. Repairing the damage. Ministers from 120 countries meet in London in a bid to save the ozone. And a special report tonight on poverty in New Brunswick. A shocking look inside substandard housing.
The CTV National News with Peter Murphy.
Good evening. The NDP's Federal Council got down to business today after recovering from the shock of Ed Broadbent's decision to retire. It voted to replace him at a leadership convention in Winnipeg this November. The Council also voted to reconsider the Meech Lake Accord. The Federal Party supports the agreement to bring Quebec into the Constitution. But as Mark Sickstrom reports, the New Democrats will review that support and make a final decision later.
Many in the NDP have never been comfortable with the Federal Party's support of Meech Lake because the accord does not entrench the Aboriginal rights of Native people or equality of the sexes. It also makes it difficult for the Northwest Territories or the Yukon to become provinces. Those so-called flaws were overlooked because the agreement brings Quebec back into the constitutional fold. But the NDP's Western Wing has now succeeded in persuading the party's Federal Council to review that policy.
The party is clearly moving to the position of reviewing the existing document and recognizing it's stalled now in Manitoba and New Brunswick, that there is an opportunity to improve the Meech Lake Accord. Those improvements should come not only from the Canadian people, but also from a perspective of the New Democratic Party.
We want Quebec in the Constitution. That is agreed. But we certainly don't want to inherit the kinds of things that we're seeing coming out of Mr. Barrasso.
The Quebec wing of the NDP does not oppose the review because it believes Quebec's special status as a distinct society will not be debated.
The initial resolution has been substantially modified, and as Quebecers, we have defended the historical interests of Quebec. And we managed to have our colleagues to reaffirm clearly their attachment to the specificity of Quebec as recognized in the Lake Meech Accord.
Ed Broadbent says the debate going on within the NDP is no different than the one going on in the rest of the country.
The resolution that was adopted by the Council this morning is a very positive resolution. It is exactly parallel to the continuing discussions that are being held by the Prime Minister and the Premiers of the other provinces.
This will all be discussed again in September, but a final decision on whether to support the Meech Lake Accord won't be made until the NDP's National Convention in Winnipeg at the end of November. That's also when the party will select a new leader. It looks like the Meech Lake Accord and constitutional reform will be one of the central issues in that race. Mark Sickstrom, CTV News, Toronto.
The NDP has imposed some restrictions on the leadership candidates. There will be a $150,000 cap on campaign spending with a $1,000 limit on individual donations. The candidates will join in a sort of a road show, visiting 14 cities and meeting party members. Ed Broadbent's impending departure may increase the pressure on Liberal leader John Turner to reveal his future plans. Turner was in Brandon today at the Manitoba Liberals' annual convention. Earlier on the program's Sunday edition, he told Mike Duffy he'll speak in due course, but he didn't sound like a man getting ready to leave. Mike?
I couldn't help but be impressed by John Turner's confident, relaxed manner. That recent back operation he had has taken away the pain that nagged him constantly during the election campaign. And unlike someone who was looking forward to retiring, Turner was actually talking about mounting a vigorous attack on the government when Parliament resumes.
You're going to find, I think, a fractious Parliament.
He believes the Liberals could have won the last election had it not been for the caucus infighting that racked the party.
We had this election won with 3 weeks to go. Then comes the negative advertising and the intervention of big business. It only worked because it was able to play on the divisions of the caucus between 1984 and 88.
And he warns Liberals across the country have no time for those who are trying to push him out.
I'm confident that there'll be a lot of auto-discipline, a lot of self-discipline imposed on the caucus by members of the caucus who don't want their careers blunted, blighted, or destroyed by some of their more ambitious colleagues.
Brave words, but Turner's comfortable with himself and determined not to be forced out of office.
I never thought I'd use the word, I never never thought I'd use the word serene, but I feel pretty serene. I felt that I fought one of the great campaigns of Canadian history.
But history will prove you're right.
That history will prove me right. That fighting for Canada, the sovereignty of Canada, the independence of Canada. What greater crusade? Oh, I sleep very well at night.
Peter, John Turner's nothing if not stubborn, and the more they try and push him out of office, the more determined he'll be to hang on. But if Turner really does want to stay on as Liberal Party leader, he'll have to get to work. His political staff has been largely depleted, and unlike his opponents within the Liberal Party, he's not been out raising the kind of money he'll need if he's to face a leadership review vote at the party's Calgary convention this fall. Peter?
Thanks, Mike. We'll have more on the NDP later. Coming up next, Eastern Airlines is grounded for a second straight day and taking steps to save the ozone layer.
There's a new breed in Canada, a new breed of bank that leaves the rest of the field standing still. If you're in business to win, you should be in business with us. Lloyd's Bank Canada, the new breed of bank.
The travel chaos caused by the Eastern Airlines strike was stopped from spreading to U.S. bus and rail lines today by an 11th-hour court order. A New York judge ruled that striking airline machinists cannot set up secondary picket lines at other carriers. The order will be reviewed Wednesday. Robert Hurst has a report on day 2 of the strike, which some analysts say could bankrupt the struggling airline.
Eastern got a few of its planes in the air when some pilots avoided the picket lines. Others chose to confront the machinists directly, like Roger Pipkin, an Eastern pilot for 27 years.
I'm going across this line, and it's breaking my heart. It's tearing my guts out. I love this company. They told me to wear civilian clothes, but brother, I'm coming through the front door of this uniform home because I'm proud of it. And they'll put me in my grave wearing it.
Pipkin then crossed through the line. Airline officials had a warning for pilots who would not.
By continuing to stay out, the pilots are committing economic suicide.
But the unions weren't heeding the threat. The giant airline was virtually shut down for the second straight day, stranding thousands of air travelers up and down the east coast of North America.
You know, this isn't what the White House has said, just another case of a union struggle against management. This is probably the purest classic case of evil versus good that's been seen in the history of organized labor.
Many are rallying to the union cause, like Jesse Jackson, who proposed civil disobedience. Other unions are planning disruption tactics of their own, in spite of the court order prohibiting it. The primary target is Continental Airlines, Eastern's partner, and possibly train and bus service as well. New York City is preparing itself for traffic gridlock if the unions manage to tie up the city's commuter rail service. The White House has warned again it will not tolerate the Eastern strike spreading to other carriers. Greyhound Bus Lines is bringing 200 extra highway coaches into this region, and Amtrak is quadrupling the size of its passenger trains. If the Eastern strike spreads to other transportation carriers, it could turn out to be one major headache traveling around the east coast of the United States this week. Robert Hurst, CTV News, Washington.
It looks tonight as though yesterday's fatal rail crash in suburban London was caused by a train driver's error. British rail officials say the driver of one of the 2 passenger trains involved has told them he failed to obey a red signal light at Purley Station just before the crash took place. 5 people were killed and 90 were injured in the accident. Rail company officials say the driver is in shock in hospital and hasn't been able to say why he ignored the signal. The world is becoming more conscious of the threat posed to the Earth's protective ozone layer by a group of chemicals called chlorofluorocarbons. Canada and now European countries have called for an 85% reduction in CFCs by the end of this century. Ministers from 120